Hey, we are live this morning talking about belief system. And I'm really excited about this topic because I believe that our belief system dictates everything that we do in life, everything that we have, everything that we are, and our future, where we're headed, is based on our belief system. Now, today we are reading from the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. And this is a book that we're going through together every Saturday morning. And today we're talking about belief system. And I'm really excited and overjoyed to have with me Omuugn himself to help us unpack some of these topics. And this is a really big topic. And I just want to give you a little bit of a heads up. It is possible that we might disagree on something today. It is possible that we might question some of the beliefs that we've had our entire lives. And it is possible that we don't come up with any new conclusions at all. But what I am excited about is having this conversation, because if we're honest with ourselves, we might ask new questions of ourselves and we might never see things the same way again. So please join me. Please open up your books. Please turn to page 69 is what we're talking about today. And please help me welcome Omuugn. There you are today, Omuugn.
Well, good morning.
It's so
Good to be here
exciting for
today.
me. It's exciting for me to see you today. Thank you for joining us.
It's scary to talk about this particular topic because it is so expansive that we're going to have to really sort of avoid a lot of rabbit trails to go through the material that we need to cover today. But it's an exciting topic and one that we need to really understand more fully.
Well, if we start out right at the top of the book, it says belief systems either limit or empower us. And I really want to know more about that, but I think we have to first create a baseline of what is a belief system.
That's an expansive question also. Let me preface everything by saying that everyone has their own belief system. And every belief system is unique to every individual for a number of reasons. And what we're going to explore today primarily is my belief system. And as you pointed out in the beginning, you're definitely going to have a different belief system than I do. So don't be offended by my belief system, because I've been working on my belief system for a long time. And it reflects my study and my journey. And if you believe something different, that's okay. I accept your belief system, and maybe this morning you could accept my belief system. I believe that in its essence, everything resolves down to resonant frequencies. And if you take everything apart till you get to the very building blocks of what something is, you're going to be standing there with a compilation of resonant frequencies. And so we need to understand how those frequencies work. Everything we experience comes to us through what we call the electromagnetic spectrum. And we're sensing information all of the time. We're surrounded by information. And our belief system is filtering, if you will, all of that information and giving us what is important to us that relates to how we operate and the traits that we're exhibiting in our life. So we might ask ourselves, the first question is, where does our belief system reside? Is it within our conscious mind? Does it actually reside in our subconscious mind, or in our higher self, which we experience through what we call our conscience? Or is it in our genes, or do we inherit our belief system?
What is the answer? Because I'm sitting here thinking into a little of all of those.
The answer is all of them. And we need to understand a little bit about all of them to really understand what our belief system is, where it originates, and how we can deal with it. Excuse me, I have a little frog in my throat this morning. Our genes play a major role in our belief system. And our genes are an expression of our DNA. Our DNA is the actual construct in our chromosomes that reside in every cell in our body. And then our genes are expressions of that. And our genes gives us our traits and our peculiarities and our habits and a lot of things that are sort of inherent. They determine really who we are as an individual. And so we need to understand that there are different kinds of genes. There are structural genes that determine how our organs and how our glandular system is functioning, and how all of the systems in our body function. There are regulatory genes that they control other genes. For example, just our liver has over 450 different functions. And so the regulatory genes are going to give all of these sets of instructions through the RNA code to our liver, so that our liver can perform all of the functions that it needs to. And there are what we call Mendelian traits. And the Mendelian traits are genes that are passed through inheritance. If you're a member of a certain family, you naturally will have certain characteristics, and you can see those characteristics manifest through the family. For example, I have a brother who is very musical, and he is an opera singer, and he has perfect pitch or relative pitch, and his wife is a beautiful pianist, and her mother was a concert pianist. And so many of their children have very developed musical abilities. He has a son who's a very renowned conductor of an orchestra. And so the Mendelian, what they're called actually Mendelian alleles, which are permanent constructs in our inherited genetic makeup. And there are polygenic traits. For example, sometimes for our body to perform a glandular function, it takes several genes working together to produce that effect. If you want to convert, for example, a sugar to a protein, it may have to go through 30 different genetic transformations in order to come out with the end product. And so many of our genes need to work together to do that. Also, the polygenic traits make us sometimes susceptible to certain diseases or malfunctions of the body. If your parents had a particular affinity toward maybe cancer or some other genetic disease, you may have those same genes. And so that will determine possibly your susceptibility to the same kind of problem.
Well, when it comes to belief systems, let's say that, and we'll use that as a baseline, if your family or your relatives, your parents, for example, had cancer, is it common then to have a belief system that says, oh no, I'm at risk for cancer? Or could you completely say, I don't believe in cancer at all, and I'm going to live a different life, and hopefully I never get cancer? Do you think that one is contingent or hinges on the other?
Well, what we're saying in the function of genes is that if your parents were predisposed to a certain condition, if you have the same gene, you will be predisposed to the same condition. That's what the inherited gene pool is. However, you can impact that with your belief system by creating a new Mendelian alleles. in other words, a permanent change in your genetic expression. And those are called methylations, but we'll maybe talk about those in a little bit. But there's a type of way that genes act that are called epigenetics. And that's really what we want to talk about today in essence, because epigenetic factors are the factors that turn genes on and off. They're the switches that enable us to change our belief system. If our belief system is running on certain genetic predispositions and we don't like the particular trait, we need to learn how to turn that off and turn on the trait that we want to exhibit in our life.
All right. So if I say that in terms that I might understand, I would say something like, if I don't like the way things are turning out in my life, I have the power to change it. Is that right? Using the epigenetics and the methyleta, whatever it is you said?
The Mendelian alleles.
There you go. Is that, am I on the right track there? I can change by changing my belief system, or I can influence a change.
Actually, that's what the whole book is about. What I did was I identified the different characteristics that make us who we are. And using scriptural and wisdom literature texts that have come down through the ages, I tried to find out what the optimal trait or characteristic would be. And if I identified traits in myself, characteristics, that were not in conformity to scripturally based and wisdom literature based wisdom, I wanted to be able to change those characteristics so that I could sort of optimize myself. And so that was the nature of the book itself, was to identify all of those characteristics and figure out how we should be moving in a direction that would maximize our potential. So
I love that. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I got a copy of the book. Now, let's say that I wake up one day.
Before we move on, there's another element that we need to cover, I think, in understanding our belief system.
Okay.
There are tangible and non-tangible elements to our belief system. And when we're born, we are born into what we might call a space-time continuum. A space-time continuum is the day you were born to the day you die, and what's happening in the world during that period of time. Like if you were born in the Renaissance period, you would be subject to certain things that were developing. Or if you were born in the Dark Ages, maybe you had very, very limited access to literature and different kinds of learning and understanding. So at the core of our perception or our belief system, our belief forms the lens by which we perceive and interpret the world. And so there exists in our space-time continuum certain philosophical and ideological and mathematical and geometric and traditional and cultural and political and religious and scientific and intellectual and moral and economic and societal parameters. And our belief system has to interact with all of those. And so to assume that we have the innate intelligence to understand the full aspect of all of those areas is kind of presumptuous. And so from the time that we're small, we are introduced to a lot of different things through our family culture and through the beliefs of our parents and the society in which we're raised. And so our belief system in the beginning is constructed in such a way that there are many false beliefs incorporated into our belief system, or there are many incomplete beliefs incorporated into our belief system. And so as we have experience and as we're introduced to certain things, we have the ability to compare our belief system to what we're experiencing. And if we understand universal laws and foundational principles, then we can sort of see what should be happening. So what is happening, why it's happening, where it's happening, we need to consider all of those factors that go into our belief system. And then sort of behind all of that, there's the spiritual belief system, the larger paradigm in which we exist, which includes what is sacred and what is transcendent and what is divine. And almost all people in all the different cultures, they have concepts of what happens after you die, how you interact with, some call it heaven, and others call it nirvana or whatever it might be. And for some, there are places that are very hot and uncomfortable that also are a possibility, I suppose. And then we get into areas of metaphysical beliefs, which are what is the nature of our consciousness, and what is the nature of our existence, and what is our reality, and what is our reality compared to the blueprint of creation and how we relate to that. And it takes us into areas like faith and trust. Faith in something that is non-empirically ascertained. In other words, you can't scientifically take faith into a laboratory and test it. Mm-hmm. Faith exists in a different realm of our belief system, but it's very powerful. And the idea that we can create our own reality, for example, the placebo effect. If people are suffering from a disease, science can give them a medication, and science can give them a placebo, which is a pill that contains no medication at all. And what they experience is that both groups, the placebo group and the medicated group, have the same result. And so the people who believe that they're taking the medication that will help them are helped by the placebo, or the belief in the placebo. So, yeah, there are so many ways to look at this. In summary, our belief system is a complex thing among a multitude of factors. And understanding those factors helps us to appreciate the diversity that exists in everyone's belief system and what we can learn from everyone. And, well, we need to cut it off there because I don't want to get too carried into the mechanics of things.
Well, I'm really curious because now understanding the baseline and understanding that it is linked to our genetics and then all the host of other things that you mentioned. Suppose you wake up one day and you discover that your life is not quite where you wanted it to be. And you're like, man, things are not working out for me so well. I wish things were different. Now, I do believe that you have the ability to change some things. And I think that all hinges on your belief system. Whether you're aware of it or whether you're unaware of it, I think it hinges on the belief that brought you to this moment. And so if you decide you want to change something, how do you know where to start?
Well, if you realize that you need to change some things, you've already started. Many people go through life unaware that changes need to be made. Some people have characteristics that are just obnoxious. Some people are very, very negative, and we really don't like to be around those people. And I think we can assume that those people don't take the time to analyze their own belief system and look at their own characteristics. And all of us have habits that permeate our lives in many different ways. And a lot of times we don't stop to analyze our habits, whether or not they really serve us or whether they don't. So we had a class on awareness, and awareness is one of the keys to being aware of what needs to be changed and what could be improved and how we can do things differently. And one of the characteristics is whether we're self-motivated or whether we need to be encouraged by other people. And so if you're not self-motivated and you're not excited about a new day and new opportunities and you're not expecting great things to happen today, then there's something in your belief system already that needs to change, because we shouldn't have to be prodded by other people to change. So where you're starting out wanting to change because you become aware of something that could improve, you're already way down the track in changing your belief system. We have in our bodies what's called a neurotransmitter system that operates through our nerves, and it keeps every part of our body in contact with our brain functions. And our brain is sort of the master director of things. But also on the surface of every cell in our body, there are 8 essential sugars. And those sugars have their own system of chemical communication throughout the body. And most people are heavy in like glucose and fructose, but they're deficient in some of the other sugars. And we get some of those other sugars through things like fenugreek and certain herbs and spices. And so if we're deficient in some of those chemical transmitters of information, then chemically we're sort of ignorant of what's going on around us or within us because the information is not being conveyed. So nutrition becomes a factor in our belief system in that it provides the nutrient basis for the neurotransmitters and the chemical sugar transmitters to function properly. And so there's so many rabbit trails and ways that we can drill down to look at the belief system, but it's a complex thing. But your question is, how do we begin to change?
Yes, and I think you just brought up a really interesting point when you start talking about nutrition, because I think nutrition does affect your overall outlook on life, and it affects your attitude, and it affects your negativity or positivity and all of those things, which then could trigger the questions, could I change and what do I need to change? And I know, for example, in my own personal life, I look at my health as one of those key elements and it goes back to my belief system. I believe I can be healthier. And so I keep consciously asking myself, can I do better? Can I do better on my diet? Can I do better on drinking more water every day and staying better hydrated than I did yesterday? Can I get better sleep than I did last night? Can I exercise more today and be more physically active, for example? And so I'm constantly asking myself a series of those questions because I know, and this is my belief system, that everything I do throughout the day, whether I'm dealing with employees or business customers or clients, everything I do is going to be predicated on the fact that I feel 100% at my best. And if I'm not at my best, I'm going to make unwise choices and I'm going to do silly things that are clumsy, or maybe they're not the best version of myself. And so I do believe that my personal belief is I'm going to make better decisions if I feel better and if I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah, a healthy body is really crucial to this whole topic. For example, every cell in our body has a certain construct, and the construct at the very heart, or the nucleus of every cell, we find our chromosomes. And our DNA is actually structured by a process called meiosis, so that there are certain nucleotides. We have 4 nucleotides that basically comprise our DNA. And the information contained within the nucleotides goes from one chromosome to another chromosome. We have 2 chromosomes in every cell. And that transmission of information is called a synapse. And a synapse has a circuit. It goes across the chromosome and then it comes back again, which makes the chromosome homologous. In other words, it's a complete circuit of information.
I have to stop you right there for just a second and say, being homeschooled by you, I had the belief system that when I grew up one day, I was going to catch up to your educational smarts. And I'm sitting here like, you know what? You just said a whole bunch of words that I don't even understand. And I did not catch up to you yet. So I just wanted to throw that out there and say that belief system was completely inaccurate.
Well, I'm not trying to confuse you, and I'm not trying to be overly complicated, but I'm trying to help you understand the process. The process of that synapse being a circuit that completes is called meiosis. And in meiosis, we're actually trying to change something. We're trying to make an alteration in our belief system, or in one of the traits, or one of the characteristics. And it is said by some, and there are differences of opinion here, but that our subconscious mind completely evaluates our entire belief system every 15 seconds. And some say it takes as long as 68 seconds. But in very short periods of time, our subconscious mind is evaluating our entire belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're going to alter that, what we alter is the meiosis that takes place in the synapse between the chromosomes. And it is said by some, and it could be true, that if you hold, well, let me start in a different place. When information is transmitted through our neuro system, our nervous system, it creates a pathway. And the pathway becomes more and more developed as we think the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will have more of a tendency to think the same things because those pathways are very, very well developed. And information will always take the path of least resistance. And so they will travel a well-developed path. If you try to change something by creating a new meiosis, by changing the synapses that take place by the way you think, then you're creating a new pathway. And a lot of people approach that by, for example, affirmations. If you affirm what you want to accomplish over and over and over again, it creates a new neural pathway. And so there will be more of a tendency for your meiosis to develop into a well-trodden path. And if the path is well-trodden for a long period of time, then that path will become part of a new belief system. And when the belief system changes, that's called a Mendelian alleles. And that is a permanent construct change in your DNA that will be passed on into your posterity, into following generations. It's hereditary.
We're dealing with that right now in the Clutter Corner. And it's another part of the business that we're doing where we're helping people that have hoarding tendencies or they have clutter issues in their homes. And what we're doing is we are trying to create the new normal by going back to the core beliefs that clutter doesn't care. Clutter doesn't care about sentiments, and it doesn't care about whether you're trying to honor the memory of someone by hanging on to something for dear life. Clutter is still a trip hazard. It can still be a fire hazard, and it can still create an enormous amount of stress and anxiety in your life if it goes unmonitored, and it can cost a lot of money if you're paying to store it in a storage unit, for example. And so what we're trying to do is create those new norms by exactly what you said, where we've created tapes that we listen to at night that then over and over again, we pick up after ourselves. We're putting stuff away as we go because we believe that we deserve a clean and tidy life. And by doing those every single night, listening to that over and over and over again, we're trying to create that new neural pathway where that becomes our intrinsic new norm. So that when we wake up in the morning, we're not consciously thinking about, oh, I just took this towel off after having dried myself from my shower. I'm going to throw it on the floor. It's a conscious effort that I touched it once, and now I can hang it back up because that's my new norm. That's the way I behave now. And we're starting to re-trigger those behaviors, even if they've never come down to us, and that's not the way we were taught or brought up as kids. And so it's a really interesting topic that you're talking about, with the possibility of changing that pathway until it becomes the well-trodden path.
Well, let me give you a little deeper insight into the very process that you just mentioned. Um, I'm trying to put this into a perspective. There are techniques that can be used that improve upon affirmations. For example, an affirmation, we're basically telling our subconscious mind to see a different program. And if our subconscious mind is evaluating our entire belief system, what we're doing is we're introducing a new variable into that process that the subconscious mind is going through. And so we can take that a step further from the affirmation to what I call a proaction. And a proaction is like a new computer piece of software that I want to run on my computer. Mm-hmm. And so I tell my subconscious mind, I'm using a new program now that I want you to recognize and run in place of this other one. And so as the subconscious mind is reviewing my belief system, I want it to start reviewing this new change as part of the belief system. And so I tell my subconscious mind, this is my new truth and my new reality. I'm actually making a change to my belief system that I want you to see as a new truth and a new reality. And my behavior from this point on will be in alignment with this new belief that I have. For example, if I'm trying to change my characteristic of procrastination, I'm going to demonstrate to my subconscious mind that I have actually made the change by not procrastinating anymore. When something needs to be done, I will just do it. I will change my action to be in alignment with my new truth and my new reality. And then my subconscious mind will pick up that new truth and new reality, and we can implement that into our subconscious mind in different ways using resonant frequencies, like the solfeggio frequencies, or you can use the EFT tapping techniques to tap things into your subconscious mind. And the tapping integrates with the emotional body, with your emotions that you may not even be aware of, but it embeds that into the subconsciousness. And so by using proactions and reprogramming, we can actually accentuate the affirmations that we want to utilize in a more profound way and make the change more rapid and more efficacious. So just a little insight.
So I have to go way back then and say, all right, let's suppose, for example, that we are discovering that there are certain beliefs that we have that no longer serve us. Maybe they served us in the past. Maybe they brought us to this moment in time. But now, as we are in this moment in time and we're looking around, we're going kind of like, this is not where I wanted to end up. How do we go forward and make those changes?
Well, the first thing is to communicate with your subconscious mind and your higher self. and say to yourself, this habit, this thing no longer serves me, and this is no longer my belief system. I am totally aware that this is no longer what I prefer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to make a change. And this may be controversial to some, but there is a universal intelligence that operates. And that universal intelligence, the way it functions is it supports your belief system, no matter what your belief system is. If you believe that you live in poverty, the universe will make sure that you experience poverty because that's your belief system. And it will bring circumstances and situations and people into your where you can interact with them to demonstrate to you that your belief system is true for you. And that truth is that you are a poverty-stricken person.
I believe that. And I think it's a lot to me. I look at it like a Google search. If I go on Google and I type in red shoes, that would be my belief system. And Google says, oh, you want red shoes, do you? And it shows me red shoes. Oh, did you mean these red shoes? Did you mean red boots? Did you mean red sandals? And it starts showing me different versions of that, trying to find exactly what it is. And I will gravitate towards the types of shoes that I'm looking for. And my beliefs, I have discovered just exactly what you're saying, where you put something out to the universe and it says, oh, did you mean this? And you will find versions or varieties of that until you land on something that supports that. Exactly. And if you ask a different question, yellow shoes, all of a sudden it brings you yellow shoes, right? Absolutely. Yeah. You ask new questions, you get new results.
That's absolutely true. And so the universe itself, the connection with multi-dimensions, the connections with the divine, the way laws and principles operate in reality, they will support your belief system, whatever it is, which puts us in a very special place in that we can create the reality that we want to experience. We can change our attitude from negative to positive. And if we change our attitude, we will change what we experience. We will change how we look at mundane tasks or the people that we're around. Our change of attitude will impact the entire environment around us, which opens up a beautiful rabbit trail that we don't want to pursue necessarily today, but there are spaces and there are kingdoms. And a space is an environment. And a kingdom is a structure that resides within that environment. For example, you mentioned clutter. If I walk into a room and there's just clutter everywhere, maybe I can't even see I don't know what kind of a floor it is, whether it's carpeted or wood floor. There's so much clutter. I can ask myself the question, is this the environment that I want to live in? And if your answer is no, then you would say, what do I need to change in this environment so that I can have a different experience? And so you create a structure for that environment, which might be having a place for everything and always keeping everything in its place and never putting things down in the wrong place and never accumulating things that you don't really want or need to cut down on the amount of things that you have to find a place for. So maybe a more simple life with less things would be less clutter and have your clutter organized. And all of a sudden, with your new belief system, you have changed your space and you put a new structure into that space. And you can do that. You can keep drilling down with spaces and kingdoms. For example, you can open a drawer in your new room and see that your room looks clean, but your drawer is really messy. You need to really clean your drawer and organize your drawer also. And so you can go into that new environment and then put a new structure in that environment. And we do that in relationships. Whenever we meet a person, it's a new space. and we say to ourselves, what is the structure that I want in this space? Sometimes we're drawn to people because they have a really positive attitude and they're vivacious and they're energetic, and we want to be like that person. And so we will say, I want to do what he's doing to be like that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so you begin to put a structure into your space in the relationship that defines the relationship. And it might be, does he want to be around me? What kind of a person am I? If he's full of energy if he's really positive, does he want to be around me if I'm negative and I procrastinate? And so if I am aware of the spaces and the structures in the spaces, then I'm going to start making changes in my epigenetic makeup to create a new Mendelian alleles that will be a permanent alteration in my DNA structure of the genetic trait, so that I become a new person in that area. And
if that's true, and you're saying you have the ability to change your belief system, and if the law of attraction is also true, does it stand to reason that instead of me going out trying to change the people around me, earlier you talked about negative people in our sphere of influence, instead of trying to change those negative people, if I change myself, then I will attract different kinds of people into my sphere of influence? Is that true?
Well, here is the universal law. Like attracts like. And it goes back to resonant frequencies, which are the building blocks of everything. It's a resonant frequency is like a channel on the television or on the radio. You turn to that channel, and that's what you're going to experience. And the reason that you choose that channel is because you want to resonate and experience what's on that channel. It might be you want to watch a horror movie because of whatever it is inside of you that wants to experience horror or fright or fear. Or maybe you want to turn to a channel on self-improvement and someone telling you how to change your belief system and how to do things that would help you be a more positive and energetic and productive person. So whatever you're resonating, that's the channel that you're going to tune into, because you will be attracted to a like frequency. And so if you're on a certain frequency, you will not be able to determine everything on that channel maybe, but everything on that channel will be available to you. And so you will see, you will understand what you're resonating with. If someone is resonating on for example, a poverty negative channel, they can be surrounded by abundance in a lot of different ways and never recognize it. They will not see abundance because they're resonating with poverty. And
can I stop on that for just a second, because I went through that myself. And I stopped one time in my belief system and I asked myself the question about poverty. And I said, am I poor? And I looked at the world around me because I was living the life of a pauper at the time. And I realized I'm not poor, I'm broke. And to me, the difference was being broke is a state of mind. Being broke is a temporary situation. I don't have any cash in my hands, but being poor is a state of mind. Poor is that poverty mentality that I don't have enough and there's not enough to go around and woe is me and I'm doomed and I'm a victim and my bills are behind and all those things, right? To me, that is poor. And being broke is like, I just don't have the cash right now to give someone, but I'm rich in abundance and I've always been loved. I've always had a roof over my head. I've always had food. I've always had clothing. I've never been without. And so maybe I didn't have all the things I wanted, but I've never been poor. I've been broke, but I've never been poor. And when I started giving myself permission to change my story, like I don't have money right in this moment, but what if I did? What would that look like? I started stop being a victim. I ended right there in that moment. I said, I am not a victim. I could be, but it's not going to help me in any way. It's not going to help me get what I want. It's not going to help me attract any abundance into my life. And I think that's a really key issue that you brought up. When you are aware, you have choices. And I was aware in that moment. I'm not a pauper. I'm not poor. I'm not down on my luck. I don't have any money right now in this moment, but I'm not poor. And then moving forward, I gave myself permission. I will never be poor. It doesn't matter how much money I do or do not have. I will never be poor. And I made that new commitment to myself. You talk about changing the programming. It's like putting a rock in the middle of the stream, and now the water has to go around that rock, right? I dropped a great big boulder in the middle, and I'm not doing the poor thing anymore. And what's really peculiar is when you talk about like attracts like, I live a life of abundance. My life is very abundant. And I look at my world as abundant. And I woke up this morning and I went walking. It had nothing to do with money, but I saw the most magnificent sunrise this morning. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. The world has to stop for just a second while I stop and take a photo of this, because this is the reason I got up this morning. This right now, I'm expressing my good health, working through a recent knee surgery. But here I am right now. I got up. I'm out here. I'm exercising. I'm celebrating the best of my health. And check it out. I've got the most magnificent sunrise one could ever hope to see. I am rich. I am rich. And it is a belief system that I've carried with me. And everywhere I turn, like you said, turning into the frequency, it keeps showing up for me in my life in different ways. It's not necessarily money, so to speak, but it's different experiences. It's different people I keep coming in contact with. It's different conversations like this one that I'm having that bring color and joy and wisdom and expansion to my world. So
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Like
bringing that to
attracts
me.
like. When you change your belief system to incorporate all of the good characteristics, you're going to see the beauty in everything. You're going to appreciate things. You're going to experience gratitude and a lot of the other characteristics that are profound. So, yeah, the channel that you're resonating on will be your experience in a lot of different ways. In fact, there's a Russian by the name of Grigory Grabovoi who used radionics, which is a technique to ascertain the resonant frequency of everything. And what he found was that every organ in our body resonates at a different frequency, an ideal frequency, if you're healthy. And like in your knee, there are like 11 or 12 different parts of your knee, and every one of those parts resonates at a different frequency. And he found that if he aligned the frequency with a particular part, like of a knee, he could heal that part of the knee just by introducing a resonating frequency that was the frequency of an ideal knee part. And he was able to, well, he is able, he's still alive, he's able to change terminal illnesses into radiant health by taking organs and glands that are cancerous and submitting them to certain resonant frequencies. And the body heals and regenerates itself because resonant frequency is the building block of everything. There was another fellow who actually originated the concept, whose name was Royal Rife. And doctors would send to him cancer patients that in the fourth stage of cancer, no hope, they were terminally ill. And within a period of like 3 or 4 weeks, they were all healed by being introduced to the resonant frequency that was ideal for that particular organ or gland. And so our resonant frequency is critical to our belief system and to how we experience life, because we're going to draw into our lives what we're resonating one way or another. So,
well, can we go back for a second to the negative people? Because I know that part of our belief system is that we are trapped in relationships with toxic people.
We
And
are.
I tend to believe that that can also be changed. Either your interaction with them can change by things that you do, or you can end those relationships or limit your accessibility to the toxic people in order to just fix your own belief system so that your interaction with them is not as what's the right word? It's not as adverse, or it's not as traumatic, if you will.
Let's go back to the space kingdoms for just a moment.
Okay.
When you interact with someone who's negative in any manner, that's a space. And so you should ask yourself this question: what can I do to alter this space so that the space would be more preferable to me? And if you ask that question, certain things will come to mind. And the things that come to mind will be steps that you can take to alter that space. The bottom line is this: if someone is resonating at say, a negative frequency, and you're trying to resonate at a positive frequency, those two frequencies are not compatible. And so if you're integrating with those people, something has to give. Either you will become more negative so that the resonant frequencies will align, or they will have to become more positive so that your frequencies will align. And so there are steps that you can take to alter the structure in that space that will change the nature of the space. And so if you follow those intuitive things, you can create a different space, and that person is going to have to react to that change in some way. We had a neighbor, for example, that was obnoxious, totally self-centered. They could care less about any. They would come over and say, "You haven't invited me to dinner for a while. Why don't you invite me over for dinner?" Okay, we'll invite you over for dinner, say Wednesday. And she'll say, "Okay, let's have this and this and this. And I'm a little short on funds right now, so I want you to provide everything, but this is what I want for dinner. And I want all the leftovers. So if there's anything left over from the dinner, I want to take those home for extra meals." I mean, that kind of a personality, just brusque. And
Can I stop and interrupt for 1 minute? I know you, and because I know you, you would have given them all the leftovers and everything anyway. But I think it's the way they approached it. Because if they hadn't begged for them or demanded them, you would have insisted that they take all the leftovers home with them. I mean, I know that right by knowing you. But I think what I hear you saying, though, is there's an opportunity to either inspire someone to want to help you, or there's no inspiration whatsoever, right? And she did not inspire you to want to help her.
no. And what I did is that I developed a structure for this space where she had some habits that were really annoying to me. And so I said, on this property, when you come here, I really don't want this to happen anymore, because we don't live that way.
Mm.
You just, not that your lifestyle is bad and mine is good, I'm not making that distinction. My
But creating
paradigm is
boundaries.
different than yours, and these are my boundaries.
Hmm.
And so after a while, she didn't come over anymore. She sort of resonated a different frequency, and she didn't want to change her frequency, and she was uncomfortable with mine. And
Hmm.
so we sort of separated our paths.
Well, and I think
So
that's the key with having boundaries, because then you are creating something that's healthy for you. And if that person is uncomfortable in that space, they either have to change their own belief structure to fit in, or they have to say, this doesn't work for me. I did that for one whole entire year of my life. I was hanging out with all the wrong people, and they were just dramatic, theatrical drama queens that had all kinds of chaos and just weird stuff going on in their lives. I was like, this is just not healthy for me. And so when I changed who I was I hate to say this, but I lost all my friends. In 1 year, I lost every single one of my friends. And then boring people started coming in my life. I call them the boring friends because they were just like normal, everyday people without all these huge dramatic things happening in their lives. They were like normal, everyday, steady, healthy people. And I became one of those people. I became like them. And I was like, this is what I want in my life. Like every day, I don't have to wake up and like have all this extra stress, chaos. It's just like normal, everyday people that you leave and you see them again and you pick up right where you left off. And there are no big dramatic changes in between. It's just consistent and healthy.
Yeah. And we're kind of running out of time. So I would like to encourage us to take certain steps in order to sort of control our belief system, bring everything into a place where we want it to be. And the beginning of that is to understand the universal laws and the foundational principles. And that's going to require some study. I actually have a book coming out in the next couple of weeks, by the end of next month anyway, on universal laws and foundational principles that have been formulated through my own studies and my own research. I suppose that if everyone did a book on universal laws and foundational principles, all of those books would be different. So that's the way belief systems work. But if you understand what those laws and principles are to you, and I would suggest that you operate according to the highest light and knowledge that you have. If you can identify those principles, then you have a standard by which you can measure everything. You can see whether a characteristic needs to be changed. You can become aware that this could be better because you understand the principle upon which it is based. And so you need to make sure that your thoughts, your words, and your actions are all in alignment. If you want to create a new belief system, your thoughts, words, and actions must all be aligned. For your subconscious mind, as it reviews your belief system, it says, well, yeah, this is the new program that's running. I see it in your thoughts, in your words, and in all of your actions. Everything aligns with this new belief system.
Well, let me ask this question. If I'm going to change a current belief system, do I have to know why the old belief system didn't work? Or can I just start from here and move forward?
Well, you need to at least recognize that it doesn't work. Why it doesn't work would give you more insight into why you had it in the first place. But all you need is your new resonant frequency. You don't have to go through all of the channels. If you're going to channel 35 on your television, you don't need to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can just hit 35 and you'll go directly to that channel. So if you want to have a process, you can have a process. If you want to have a shorter process, you can have a shorter process.
I like shorter process.
If you don't want to process at all, you can just go to the resonant frequency and experience the reality without any process. So there are a lot of different variables.
If you do that though, if you just jump to the fast track, because I'm a fast track kind of person. You tell me there's a fast track, I'm going straight for the fast track. But if you go the fast track route and you just go to that frequency and you try to live like that, what will keep me from falling back to the old belief system because I haven't maybe consciously made the change and I don't know what that change is? If I just go here and I experience it for a minute, like, whoa, this is super cool. How do I keep from reverting back?
Well, people do that all of the time. That's what's called the comfort zone. People will always move through the comfort zone until they get to the fringe. And all of the action is taking place on the fringe. And you get to a place where you're uncomfortable dealing with all of the new things on the fringe. And so the natural tendency is to go back to the comfort zone. So people are always moving back and forth from the comfort zone to the fringes to the comfort zone, and their life just cycles that way all of the time. If you want to really move forward with a new belief system, you want to go to the fringe and tell your subconscious mind, this is my new truth and my new reality. And you're not going to go back to the comfort zone. You're going to implement the new belief system and hold it while the subconscious mind is reviewing the new belief system instead of going to the old pathways. And it will create a new Mendelian alleles, which will be a permanent hereditary change in your DNA structure through the genetic, through the epigenetic change.
Well, that was a fantastic way to wrap up today's session. I'm now going to have to go buy a whole new dictionary so that I can go back and learn all the things that you mentioned.
Well, I hope it wasn't too complicated, but
no, this was awesome. We are reading from the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. This is Omuugn joining us, and next week our topic will be on challenges and circumstances. So I have a feeling we'll be picking up where we left off today and continuing through the challenges of our lives. But this is fantastic. If you have not already, go ahead and pick up your copy of the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn, and we will see you here again, same time, same place next week. Thanks for joining us today.